Hey fellow gliders, welcome back. Today we are going to take a look at how to create dynamic inline lists based off of time frames. So we have here an inline list of our revenue that we've generated over the course of the year, everything from January 14th all the way through June 2nd, let's say. Now we could certainly grab a roll-up column and sum our total for the year. That's pretty easy. But what if we want to sum different parts of the year, like today, yesterday, this week, this quarter, this year, last year, January, different time frames? How do we go about doing that efficiently in Glide? Now, Glide doesn't have a native way of doing this. We have to craft this ourselves. So what I highly recommend is coming into your data editor, and we're going to create a work table. A work table is basically a table that you have in your app here that is sole purpose is for calculations and relations and navigation and so forth. It isn't like no actual data lives here. It's basically a way to bring in data, manipulate the data, and then display the data from other places. All right, so we're going to create a new work table. And in this work table, it's going to be mostly filled with things we're bringing in from other places, as well as user-specific columns. So no hard data actually lives here, but in order to create a work table, you do have to have at least one true value. So I highly recommend that true value just to be a row ID, just kind of save yourself some time. It could just be some gibberish you put inside of a text column too. That's fine, but I recommend just putting a row ID since we like to create those anyway. All right, so inside of this work table, here's where we're going to craft our filtering, so to speak. So what I'm imagining here is somewhere on this screen, we have a selector, maybe this year, this month, today, this week, something like that, right? And maybe a way eventually down the line to select a certain month. We can get fancy. We'll keep it simple for this tutorial here. So we need some sort of choice component that's going to be written there. Now that choice component is going to be some text, something that's readable like today or this week, right? But that needs to translate to some sort of code or value that we can use to relate to all of the records that pertain to that time frame. So we're going to craft that. Now, where do we house that choice component selection? Right? If I select this month, where does that this month then go? We can put it in one of two places. You can either place it inside the user sheet because we can bring in that user value from anywhere, or you can actually write it directly to the work table, either one. So right now this screen is built off of the user sheet. So I'm going to switch it to my work table in just a second. First, I'm going to copy this inline list so I don't lose it. And I'm going to convert this to the work table here and then paste. Okay, let's head back to our work table. And now we're going to house a user-specific column for our choice component. So we'll call this time frame. And we're going to make it user-specific. Now, the reason we're going to make it user-specific is because when we have different users using our app, they're going to be selecting different time frames that matter to them. And we don't want if someone just choose year and then everybody else who's using the app, suddenly their view switches to the year, right? So we need that to be user-specific. We'll hit done here. And now that we have this column in here, we should be able to put in a choice component that can write to that value. So let's test this out. So I'll do choice. I'm going to drag it to the top here. There we go. And it's going to write to the time frame. And we'll probably put it in chips form. And then we have to select, obviously what time frames we're going to choose. So we need to have a list of available time frames. So we're going to create another table. And we're going to call this time frames. Usually I house all of these options in a singular sheet called options or choices or menu or something like that. But for our purposes today, we'll just have the singular sheet called timeframes. And then we're going to select some different timeframes, maybe today, maybe this week, this month, and this year. All right. And based upon what they select here, that's what's going to get written to the time frame sheet or time frame column. So let's go ahead and edit our choice component where the source is going to be the time frames. And now we see we have today, this week, this month, this year, and maybe the dash just simplifies all, right? All right, so right now this does nothing, right? Except for writing a value inside of our work table. All right, so now we have to create our math logic. So when I choose this month, what I need is a way to grab all of our revenue values from the current month. Now, in order to figure out what the current month is, we have to leverage a value that's available in a math column called the now value. So just so you see what this looks like, I'm going to create a math column, and I'm going to write the word now. The configuration, just put in anything. I usually write the word now. And now is going to stand for the now value. Okay, so the math column, yes, it can do calculation with numbers, but it can also do calculations with dates. And so now you see that my now is June 2nd at 11:26 a.m. And if you were to look at the clock in the top right corner of my screen, you see that it's accurate. All right, I hit done. Okay, so now we need a way to make sure that if it's this month, we're going to grab just the month from the now value, and then we're going to relate it to the month of our dates. Now, how do you do this effectively? My recommendation, now this is a trick I learned a couple of years ago, but it's super helpful. And it's basically converting your date time column here to a numeric value. Because when you deal with numbers, it's easier to make true relations than dealing with dates. Because when you're working with dates, you have lots of different formats, not only regional, but also even within your same region in the same language, you have different numeric or text versions of those dates. So it's easier to convert your dates to a number that you can then make relations for. All right, so we have a few different time frames here, today, this week, this month, this year. And we have to craft a value that represents each of those four. So luckily we have copy and paste of columns and so forth. So I'm going to start with just the year. All right, year is pretty easy. So we're going to say date year. And again, we're going to use the math column because math can do calculations on dates. And one of our formulas we're going to use is the year, and we're going to grab the year of the date. And you see that it puts it into a number form. And then from here, I like to format it a little bit so it looks more like the year. So I remove the group separator and I make precision 1. Okay, so that's the date year. So now if we want the date month, I'm going to just clone or duplicate this column. Now I can't just choose month here like this, because yes, it does give me a number value for the month. However, the problem is that it doesn't factor in the year, and I want to make sure that I'm looking at this year's June, not last year or the year before's June, right? So we have to have a combination of the month and the year to make it unique. So what we do is we add both. We do year of the date plus the month of the date. But you see, it still kind of looks like a year here. So the trick is to do the year of the date times 100, then the date. And so now you see that's 2022-01 versus 2022-02-03 and so forth. So now we have, basically we've combined the year and the month into a singular value. Let me hit done. Let's make this year, date, month. All right, so we have a value for the year. We have a value for the month. To get a value for the week, we're going to clone the date month. We're going to call this date week. And we're going to leave the year date times 100, but instead of using the month, we're going to use the week number. So it's week num, then the date. So we see here, this is the 003. This is the third week of the year, and it's going to go all the way up to 52 once the year is done, right? So 2022, right now we're currently in the 23rd week of the year, right? And ultimately, the very last week of December would be the 52nd week of the year, right? And then it resets back to 2023-01 for the first week of 2023. All right, so we have year, we have month, we have week. Now to get the day. So to get the day, I'm going to clone this last one here. I'm going to do date of today. And this one, we're going to do we need the year, we need the month, and we need the day. So I'm going to change week num back to month. And then I'm going to do plus day of the date. Now, this is halfway there. The problem is that right now we're combining the month and the day. So if you see this, it looks like 2022-15, which was taking the first month, 1, plus the 14th day, 15. That doesn't look right. So what we have to do is add some more zeros. So the year, instead of times 100, we're going to add it times 10,000. And then we're going to do the month times 100. And then the day. All right, so now this looks more like a date. We have 2022, 01, 14. 2022, 01, 15, and all the way to the current date. So here you can see how the date is represented by that value for today. So now that we have these 4 values, we have to craft an identical set of 4 values in our work table. So we have now, but we're going to convert this now to be the now year. So again, we're just going to do the year of now. And we'll format it the same way. Okay, we'll clone this, and we're going to do the month of now, which again was year times 100 plus the month of now. Okay, then we're going to do the now week, which we're just replacing the word month with week num. Done. And we'll do now today, which is 10,000 plus the month of now times 100 plus the day of now. Done. All right, so not too bad. We crafted those 4 values here. All right, so now what we need is a way to specify which value we're looking at based upon what is selected. Now, the only thing that we haven't yet determined is what if we want to relate to all of them? So when they relate to all of them, the time frame is going to be empty here, right? So we'll need to have some sort of value we can use to relate to all of the values in our revenue. We can just use a static value here. So maybe we can use the word all. So in a template column here, I'll just write the word all. We'll see if this works. All right, in our work table, now we have to craft an if then else. Okay, so first we're going to check to see if time frame is empty, meaning they haven't selected anything, then all. Okay, next, if time frame is today, then we'll choose the now today. If time frame is this week, then now week. Let me just make sure I'm spelling these right. Yeah, it's all capitals. Okay. If time frame is this month, then we'll choose now month. And lastly, if time frame is this year, then now year. Done. Okay, so now we have this value, and now we want this value to relate to our revenue. All right? But how can we make it so that that one singular value is going to relate to multiple columns here? What we can do is we can use the make array feature. So I'm going to craft a new column, and we're going to make it a make array. And here we're going to combine all of the values. So we'll call these time frames. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 time frames available to us. Right? We have the date of the year, the month, the week, the day, and the all. Okay. So now all 5 values are basically in its own array for each of our records. All right. So then lastly, we just have to relate our if then else here to that array. So we're going to call this relation to revenue. So I'm going to relate our if then else to the revenue timeframes. And we're going to match multiple because there's more than one record. Our if then else should probably be named something. We'll call this timeframe value. Done. All right. So here is our relation based upon what we've selected. So now what we can do is our inline list is no longer going to point to our revenue sheet, but now it's going to point to our relation to the revenue. All right. All right, so let's see if this works. So if I choose today, I should only get values from June 2nd. There we go, June 2nd. If I choose this week, it should be everything in June. So it's the current, so we're currently in this first week of June, which also includes May 29th, 30th, and 31st. This month should be just all of June. Okay, so this month didn't seem to work. It also picked up some values in February for some reason. Let's figure out why. So I chose this month, which was 2022-06. So that should have related to only of 2022-06. Oh, I see, because the week num. So our week num, yeah, because our week num is formatted very similarly to our month. So what we have to do is craft a more unique or a distinguishing value between our month and our week num. All right, so let's go back to our date week. What if we did this? Because what if we did 10,000 plus the week num of 100? Because there's never going to be a 0 day, right? So we know that this will never generate, or this will never conflict with the date for today. All right, let's do that. And then for the work table, we'll come back and we'll just alter this to be this times, and then this times 100. So again, the week num, I'm just altering our value here so we don't get conflicts. All right, so now it should just be June. Yeah, there we go. So now just June, this week, today, and then this year will be all of 2022. See that? Pretty cool. All right, so now that we have this nifty little dynamic relation, in our work table, we can also start generating some values, right? So we have the relation already, so now we can do something with this relation. Besides just displaying a list, we could also maybe grab a total, right? And this is just going to be a roll-up of that relation. And we're going to grab our income. Done. But I guess our income needs to be formatted correctly. This should be a number. Okay, so our work table for our revenue, we don't want the count, we want the sum. Right, and we can grab, make it look like a currency. So our total for that period is here. We could also grab the average, let's say. So I could duplicate this and we'll call this average. Right, or we grab the average. And then maybe we also want like the total number of records that contributed to that total, right? So we can say like total records. So again, a roll up of our raw revenue. And this we can just grab a count of how many row IDs there are. Let's grab a count. All right, so then we can display this somewhere, right? Maybe we display it in a table. We'll add a couple of values here, and we're gonna add like the total, the average, and then the total number of records. Total for this period. All right, so we should see this dynamically change as well. So like today, we had 7 records, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the total was 3,000, but the average per day was 554, right? This week, this month, and this year. All right, look how magical that is, right? Today, this week, this month, this year. Not terribly complicated at all. All we had to do was come over to our records table, take a look at our date column, and then craft some values based on that date column. We create some numeric values using some basic math, right? And then we made it into an array so we can make a relation to it. Then we crafted a work table, had those exact same values, but based off of the now value, and then had an if then else condition running to pick one of these based on what they've selected, make the relation, and then do some summary of that relation. Now, all of these values are based off of the now value, meaning it's something current, right? It's either today, or it's within this week, or this month, or this year. If you wanted to do values that are like last week or last year or a specific month within the year, then we'll no longer be able to really leverage the now value. We'll have to craft a different value in order to make that relation, but we're going to save that for part 2. So stay tuned for part 2 of this series. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment below. You can always reach out to me at Twitter at @rpetito. And as always, thanks for watching.